Welcome back to TPS. The higher an NFL player is drafted, obviously, the more people expect him to shine. Just look at some of the greatest wide receivers ever. Guys like Jerry Rice, Larry Fitzgerald, and Randy Moss were all first-round picks. Even today's top wideouts, namely Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., and Amari Cooper, were first-round picks. But not all of the NFL's greatest wide receivers were first-round picks. Many of them actually were drafted in the fourth round or later. I'm Justin Fraction, and today we present the 10 greatest wide receivers that weren't drafted in the first round. At TPS, we post videos every single day, so don't forget to click the subscribe button to subscribe. Then click the notification bell to be notified when we post a new video. And a huge shout out to Sean White for suggesting this video list. If you have any ideas for videos, leave them in the comment section. You never know, we might use one and give you a shout out. Before the list, here are a few honorable mentions. Steve Smith Sr., the ultimate underdog story. The 5'9" Smith was a third-round pick by the Carolina Panthers in 2001. How do 5 Pro Bowl selections and 14,731 career receiving yards sound? Hines Ward. He was a third-round pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1998. Ward was named to 4 Pro Bowls and won 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers. He was also named Super Bowl 40 MVP and owns most of the Steelers' franchise wide receiver records. Drew Pearson. The Dallas Cowboys signed him as an undrafted free agent in 1973. Pearson won a Super Bowl with Dallas and was named to 3 Pro Bowls. He'll forever be remembered for catching Roger Staubach's Hail Mary in a 1975 playoff game against Minnesota. John Stallworth. The Pittsburgh Steelers drafted him in the 4th round in 1974. In fact, Pittsburgh selected 4 future Hall of Famers that year. Stallworth played an integral role in the Steelers' 4 Super Bowl championships in the 70s. Number 10, Brandon Marshall. The Denver Broncos took a chance on UCF wide receiver Brandon Marshall in the 4th round, 119th overall in the 2006 draft. Marshall brought good size at 6'5", 232 pounds, but that simply wasn't enticing enough for 31 other teams. After a not-so-productive rookie season, B. Marsh broke out in his sophomore year. He recorded 102 receptions for 1,325 yards and 7 touchdowns. It was the first of 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons for Marshall. A 6-time Pro Bowler, Marshall was a stud with whichever team he played for. He never had an elite quarterback throwing his way. Marshall spent the bulk of his career with the likes of Kyle Orton, Jay Cutler, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Through the 2018 season, Marshall recorded 970 receptions for 12,351 yards and 83 touchdowns. Would you say that this 4th-round pick is a lock for the Hall of Fame? Duh. Number 9, Andre Reed. The Buffalo Bills selected Reed in the 4th round of the 1985 NFL Draft, and boy did this man surpass expectations. Along with quarterback Jim Kelly and running back Thurman Thomas, Reed became a central piece in one of the NFL's all-time greatest offenses. Kelly and the Bills dominated their defenses with their no-huddle offense. It was virtually unstoppable, with Reed making the big catches and Thomas running all over the field. This led to 4 straight Super Bowl appearances in the 90s, though the Bills lost all 4 of them. Reed was a 7-time Pro Bowler and finished his career with 951 receptions, 13,198 yards, and 87 touchdowns. He's enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, too. And this guy was only a 4th-round pick? Well, all right then. Number 8, Isaac Bruce. Bruce was almost a 1st-round pick, but the St. Louis Rams got him 33rd overall in the 1994 draft instead. Bruce quickly grew into one of the NFL's top playmakers, but his game really took off when Kurt Warner became the starter in the 1999 season. Warner, Bruce, and running back Marshall Faulk formed one of the greatest offenses ever. Warner won the 1999 League MVP, and the Rams won Super Bowl 34 over the Tennessee Titans. Bruce, by the way, caught the game-winning 73-yard touchdown that season. Bruce led the league in receiving yards during the 1996 campaign with 1,338. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler as well. Bruce ranks 5th all-time in career receiving yards, 13th in receptions, and 12th in receiving touchdowns. Number 7, Bob Hayes. A star at Florida A&M, Bobby Hayes was drafted in the 7th round by the Dallas Cowboys in the 1964 draft. For what it's worth, the AFL's Denver Broncos also selected Hayes in the 14th round of the 1964 draft. Hayes decided to join America's team, and the Olympic track and field gold medalist needed little time to make an impact in the NFL. Hayes, along with quarterback Roger Staubach, built the Cowboys into one of the NFL's top teams in the 70s. A 3-time Pro Bowler, Hayes led the Cowboys to a Super Bowl VI championship. He was also named a first-team All-Pro in 1965 and 66. Sadly, Hayes passed away in 2002, 7 years before he would be elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But still, what a career it was for a man who was drafted so late in 2 separate drafts. Hayes will forever be remembered as one of the greatest draft steals in NFL history. Number 6, Antonio Brown. Question his character and attitude all you want, I do. But there is no denying that Antonio Brown is the best wide receiver of this era. Hard to believe that this man somehow slipped so late in the 2010 draft. Brown was drafted in the 6th round, 195th overall by the Steelers that year. Thing is, he didn't earn much attention since the Steelers had two other stud wideouts in Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders. But Wallace and Sanders departed Pittsburgh in 2013 and 14 respectively, and in the latter year, Brown broke out as the league's best wide receiver when he recorded 129 receptions for 1,698 yards and 13 touchdowns. Brown has continued his dominance since that breakout year. Going back to the 2013 season, he's registered over 100 receptions and 1,000 receiving yards every year. Talk about consistency. Brown has dazzled with his slick athleticism, amazing hands, and superb route running, an area that he may be the best ever in. And even when he's drawn plenty of double coverage over the years, Brown has still shredded defenses with relative ease. From a 6th-round pick to a future Hall of Famer, it's been quite the story for Brown. You can make a case that he'll be a top 5 all-time receiver when his career ends. Number 5, Cris Carter. The Philadelphia Eagles drafted Carter in the 4th round of the 1987 supplemental draft, so obviously expectations weren't super high for him. Carter put up decent numbers in his 3 seasons with the Eagles, but nothing that screamed spectacular. The Eagles released Carter as he dealt with drug and alcohol problems, and the Minnesota Vikings picked him up off waivers in 1990. And boy, did this move ever change Carter's career, and the Minnesota franchise too. Carter found his groove in Mini and emerged as one of the top wide receivers in the 90s. He hit 1,000 yards for the first time in the 1993 campaign. It would be the first of 8 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons for Carter. He and Randy Moss formed one of the most lethal wide receiver duos ever when the former burst onto the scene as a rookie in 1998. That year, the Vikings went 15-1 and set an NFL record with 556 points. Carter retired an 8-time Pro Bowler who led the league in receiving TDs 3 times. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and ranks 6th all-time in career receptions with 1,101 and 4th in touchdown receptions with 130. Number 4, Steve Largent. The Houston Oilers selected Largent in the 4th round of the 1976 draft, but they actually gave up on him rather quickly. Shortly before his rookie season, Largent was dealt to the Seattle Seahawks for nothing more than an 8th-round pick, and boy would the Oilers ever regret it. Largent emerged as one of the most dynamic receivers the NFL had ever seen. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler and led the league in receiving twice. And folks, this was without an elite quarterback ever throwing the football to him. Largent had 8 1,000-yard seasons in his career and was named to the 1980s All-Decade team. He's regarded by some as the greatest Seahawk of all time, and rightfully so. Largent was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1995. Not bad at all for a guy who was a 4th-round pick and eventually traded for an 8th-round selection. Number 3, Raymond Berry. The Baltimore Colts were an NFL juggernaut throughout the 50s and 60s, led by the dynamic duo of Berry himself and quarterback Johnny Unitas. Berry was undoubtedly the best wide receiver of his era, earning 6 Pro Bowl selections and leading the NFL in receptions and receiving yards 3 times each. Berry and Unitas led the Colts to the 1958 and 1959 NFL championships. Berry was also a 4-time first-team All-Pro and into the NFL's 75th anniversary all-time team. You can absolutely make a case that Unitas, Berry are the greatest QB wide receiver duo to ever live. They dropped the hammer on defenses for over a decade in an era where the passing game simply wasn't as effective as it is today. And yeah, Berry is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Number 2, Terrell Owens. When it was all said and done, Terrell Owens would become one of the most well-known and certainly one of the most controversial wide receivers in NFL history. Surprisingly, this guy didn't hear his name called until the 3rd round of the 1996 draft. The 49ers finally took him with the 89th pick, and he simply wreaked havoc on the teams that decided to pass on him. T.O. sits 3rd all-time in career receiving yards with 15,934. Only Jerry Rice and Larry Fitzgerald have more. In reality, if he had simply stayed away from all the drama and simply played his game, he'd likely be able to challenge the likes of Randy Moss for the label of greatest wideout ever. Owens, a 6-time Pro Bowler, seemed to make more noise with his excessive celebrations than actual play on the field. But really, few players could ever take a game over on offense like he did. Owens led the NFL in receiving touchdowns in 3 different seasons. Wherever he went, T.O. simply produced. Owens led the Eagles to a Super Bowl 39 appearance, helping Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid finally get over the hump. They lost to the New England Patriots 24-21, but T.O. did show just how much he meant to this team. Owens played in the Super Bowl on the fractured fibula, and he still had 9 receptions for 122 yards. Yep, Owens absolutely earned his spot in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Consider him a top 5 all-time receiver. And number 1, Don Hutson. The NFL draft didn't exist at the time. The Green Bay Packers signed Alabama wide receiver Don Hutson before the 1935 season, with the future Hall of Famer coming off of a consensus All-American selection. You kids may not know about Don Hutson. Historians widely consider him one of the absolute greatest football players to ever live. Folks, this guy revolutionized the wide receiver position. He led the NFL in receiving yards 7 times, in receptions 8 times, and in receiving touchdowns 9 times. Nobody was as dominant as Hudson, plain and simple. He led the Packers to 3 NFL championships and was a 4-time NFL All-Star. On top of that, Hudson won 2 MVP awards. The NFL Network ranked Hudson as the greatest Green Bay Packer of all time. Not Brett Favre, not Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Hudson himself. He's one of the greatest athletes in American history, and without Hudson, who knows where the game of football would have gone. He was instrumental in making it all the more popular in the 30s and 40s. Which other great wide receivers weren't drafted in the first round? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.